beware. Hello, all of my Kickstarters, and welcome back to Viewer Beware. It's the show where we go over each and every episode of the original Goosebumps TV series, and today it's the very, very special two-part event that is How I Got My Shrunken Head. Now, this one holds a special place in my heart because when I was in 6th grade, I chose this book as an independent reading project where I had to make a board game based on the book I read, and I basically made this thing where you had to move your piece around, and then you could use jungle magic to kind of re-roll your dice or like push people back and around. I got a solid C on this project. So, I mean, Hasbro, if you're out there, I'm open for offers.
Didn't you call it Shrunken Head Monopoly?
Yeah, but that's enough of my former glory.
It's nothing like Monopoly, though. You don't even own property.
Yeah, and I got a C. Moving on. How I Got My Shrunken Head stars some Goosebumps alum that we've seen before with Rebecca Henderson, who you may remember as the older sister from Stay Out of the Basement, and also Richard Fitzpatrick, who is the dad in this episode, but he was also the dad in Night of the Living Dummy Part 2, which is the first part, because they never made Part 1, but we go over that in detail in the past. And there's a little bit of star power in this episode too, because the lead is Daniel Clark, who you may remember from a show called Erie, Indiana, The Other Dimension, which was also on Fox Kids. It's sort of a spin-off of a much better show just called Erie, Indiana, that starred Omri Katz, who you may remember from Hocus Pocus. But The Other Dimension was kind of a lesser thing. It was still in that Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark vein, but you know. Then later on, he had roles in Degrassi The Next Generation, and he had a small part in Juno, so he kind of shifted gears from kids' horror into teenage drama and teenage pregnancy, which, that's horrific. That's pretty horrific, if you ask me.
Talk about getting a scary bump.
You're telling me. But anyway, How I Got My Shrunken Head is the story of a loner kid who goes halfway across the world and discovers the magic of the locals. Sure, we've seen it before, but have we seen it with a magical boiling pot that shrinks any body part you put into it? I don't think so. So with that, my friends, let's crack open our Jungle Brews and Jungle Boogie with How I Got My Shrunken Head. We start with a shot of our hero Mark that was very obviously filmed on a sunny day, but with a blue filter to make it appear as if it's the middle of the night. Mark receives a mysterious parcel from his Aunt Benna and takes it back to his room that is stuffed full of all kinds of jungle trinkets, presumably sent to him from Benna over the years. As Mark looks for a knife to open the package, it suddenly rumbles to life and something rips out of the box. Mark, armed with a spear, hunts for whatever is now loose in his room before he finds it under the bed. The shrunken head floats through the air and corners Mark in his room. But before it can do any kind of damage, Mark's mom and her boyfriend Ed open the door. This is Ed's first time meeting Mark, and already it's off to a bad start. So he decides to peel his Mustang out of the driveway while Mark's mom is literally begging for him to come back. Obviously, Mark's mom is completely fed up with her son swatting away all of the primo dong in the neighborhood and goes to give him a piece of her mind. As she runs down Mark's flaws, he completely ignores her to play his jungle game and scream his catchphrase.
Mark?
Kalia!
Are you listening to me?
Kalia! Kalia!
At this point in time, it feels like the writer of The Babadook just watched this episode and ran with it further from the mom's perspective. But Mark says that Kalia is a word that he made up to feel stronger. And his mom says, "That's cute, get all this jungle shit out of my house right now."
What?
You heard me. I want all this jungle stuff out of here. No more shrunken heads, no more masks, no tom-toms. I don't even want to see a coconut in here unless it's sliced up in a fruit salad.
Mark, upset, decides to go to bed, and the next morning he's woken up by his Aunt Benna calling from the jungle. On the phone, Benna wants to confirm that Mark got the shrunken head and wants him to come join her in the jungle for 2 weeks. Obviously, any parent would be concerned about this, but Mark's mom is equal parts frustrated at her son's behavior and frustrated at her inability to get laid, so she happily agrees.
You want me to send my son away from home to a jungle on the other side of the world for 2 whole weeks? When?
Mark, in full jungle adventurer clothes, arrives at the airport and meets an Elvis impersonator who's the pilot for this personal aircraft.
I'm Jimmy. I'm your pilot.
As the two fly to the jungle camp, Elvis works on his impressions before his engine fails.
What's wrong?
Nothing to worry about. Just a little engine trouble.
A little engine trouble?
Okay, big engine trouble.
And tells the young boy they're probably going to die now. Mark hears the shrunken head in his pocket say his catchphrase and shouts it at the top of his lungs, seemingly causing the engine to engage again. After Mark lands at the campsite, he meets the researcher's teenage daughter, Kareen, that absolutely despises the jungle life.
Really? How would you like to spend a year of your life in the world's biggest salad?
Kareen takes Mark to her parents' research center, all the while being mysteriously stalked by people in white clothes with sunglasses. Some major cult vibes. Mark immediately wants to see his aunt, but the researchers at the lab are avoidant until one of them spills the beans.
Where is she?
I'm afraid we don't know, Mark. She's disappeared.
Dr. Richard tells Mark that they're going to form a search party to look for Benna, and Mark just has to stay put in the meantime. But while Mark tries to stay put, he has absolutely off-the-wall hallucination nightmares. Was it the jungle madness, perhaps? Is he still hallucinating when he wakes up and finds his shrunken head floating around? Either way, he follows the magical noggin until it reveals a cabinet full of VHS tapes, and Mark watches the latest one in the collection. While nothing of note seems to be happening on the tape, Mark is interrupted by Dr. Hollings arriving to make a radio call, so he hides under the desk. As Holling gives an update to a man on the radio, he makes it clear that Mark is here as a hostage, and Benna didn't just get lost, she ran away. When Mark tries to run out of the tent, he runs into one of the white suit sunglass guys that immediately isn't acting right.
Hey, you listen to me? Hey!
Mark is full-on captured now, and Hollings drops the charade. Turns out Aunt Benna discovered Kalia 5 years ago, which means jungle magic. It gives you the magical abilities to just kinda do anything you want. Benna then began using the locals as human test subjects, but the tests were unsuccessful and left them as mindless zombies. So Aunt Benna is an actual monster, and we can only hope she's been eaten by a giant python in the jungle. Anyway, due to jungle madness, Aunt Benna gathered all of her research notes and ran out into the jungle. Then the Howlings pretended to be her to call Mark and get him out to the jungle to lure her back. The next day, the search party is gathering together, but when Kareen tries to get Mark, she discovers he is gone. Turns out Mark suspected Hollings of lying about his aunt and ran off into the jungle to find her on his own. However, he quickly finds himself knee-deep in quicksand and panics until Kareen finds him.
It's no good. Can't you get any closer?
If I could come any closer, I'd be up there with you, Corinne!
You don't have to get sarcastic, Mark. I'm just trying to help. I'm sorry, Mark.
Oh, that was good. Thanks a lot.
Also, I get that this is a stressful situation, but if he was talking to me all sarcastic like this, I'd just let his ass sink. But that's just me. Luckily, the shrunken head activates and Mark uses his jungle magic to just get out of the sticky situation.
Kalia! 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 Mark!
After he's saved from the pit, Kareen reveals that her father and mother were the ones doing the human experiments, and not Aunt Benna, which Mark already knew. The two then follow the floating head deeper into the jungle until they spot a campfire, but when they get closer to investigate, they make a horrible mistake. But it turns out it's just good old Aunt Benna pretending to be a jungle native. After fishing the kids out of the pit, Benna lets the kids know that she's not able to give them the magic because it's too powerful. But Kareen immediately betrays them and reveals her parents have been trailing them the entire time.
Well done, Kareen. Daddy and I are very proud of you.
Thanks, Mom. It was easier than I thought it would be.
Corrine thinks the secret of the magic is the shrunken head, which she attempts to use.
Ka-li-ah. Ka-li-ah.
When that fails, Hollings tries to get Benna to reveal the secret.
Why not just tell me how it works?
Hollings, I wouldn't tell you how the phone book works.
When she's uncooperative, the Hollings string up Mark by his ankles and threaten to shrink his head if Benna doesn't teach them magic. Benna still refuses, and they drop Mark closer to the pot of boiling ooze. As things look grim, Mark remembers back to his 8th birthday, where he remembers that Aunt Benna hypnotized him and transferred jungle magic into his body. Mark then starts chanting and magicking all over the place. After getting out of the trap, Mark uses his magic to get the locals to round up the Holling family and dunk them into the shrinking pot while he does flips.
Alright!
Mark, excited that he's basically a superhero now, thinks of all the things he can do. But Benna makes him give the power back to the natives, flashing us into the future where Mark is telling the story of his trip to Ed, the guy that was piping his mom like a city plumber for 2 weeks straight. The two then go out for coffee in the middle of the night, a likely story, but Mark sees them off anyway. As Mark is all alone, he remembers there's something he has to do.
Please give us something. We need something to eat. I want this is unfair.
Calm down. I didn't forget.
You cool. Give me that. Give cool. Give me that. Give me that.
Don't worry, you guys. My Aunt Benna said she was gonna find a way to bring you back to your normal size.
When?
She's gonna bring it when she comes to visit.
Good. Oh, grace.
On my 16th birthday.
No. Richard, do something.
No, it's good. So, Mark is keeping the Hollings in his closet as pets for roughly the next 6 years. Naturally, this raises a whole lot of questions like, why did he bring them home in the first place? If Aunt Benna is staying in the jungles of Belladora to discover a cure for their affliction, why ship them halfway across the world to Pennsylvania in the first place? Also, how'd they get on the plane? Were they on, like, his carry-on? Did he have to check them into storage?
He probably had them in the pockets of his vest.
In the book, Mark didn't really have to worry about the plane situation because the Howling family just ran into the jungle after getting shrinky-dinked. The episode actually has a whole lot of changes from the book. Like in the book, Mark has a sister and friends, and his room wasn't decked out in jungle decor. He also had a father, and as we know in the episode, Mark's mom is severely deprived of dingling. It's the whole reason she ships him out. So aside from making Mark a weirdo, smartass only child, the episode also added an Elvis impersonator. It cut out an entire sequence with a live tiger, and the head kind of talked more in the episode, and it also guided Mark around like he was in an open world video game. And in addition to the Howlings running into the jungle to presumably be eaten by the wildlife, the book ends with Mark back home with the shrunken head after Aunt Benna sucked the magic out of him. Pause. But then he's going to school and the head says, "Hey, let me tell everybody about the tiger." And that's how the book ends. And naturally they had to change that because they can't afford a fucking tiger.
Just toss Mark into a tiger pit at the zoo. Harambe style.
This episode does have a noticeably higher budget than the rest of the series so far though, because they had a whole jungle setting, multiple scene changes, tons of extras, but a tiger? There's no way in hell they could do that. Not a chance. They spent the last of their money making Mark flip in midair on green screen, like it's Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. But the higher budget does a lot to make this episode stand out, and it's really memorable because of that. Unfortunately, after rewatching it, it's also pretty memorable because Daniel Clark makes some acting choices that really leads you to viscerally want to punch this child in the throat. So with all these facets of the episode factored into the algorithm, putting it into dual layer double chain AI synthesis. I'll have to give this a 4 bumps out of 5. Check it out. Especially if you have an aunt that lives in the jungle and wants to imbue you with magic. So if an adult ever comes up to you and says, hey man, I got some magic to give you in my basement, but you can call it jungle. I don't know where I was going with that. Just say no. Avoid that at all costs. Anyway, thank you for watching. Viewer beware. I'll see you guys on the next one.
You killed me.
Don't tempt me.